He's, as you all know, he currently serves as a senior political analyst for CNN. And what you also probably know is that he is incredibly committed and spends the enormous majority of his time working on the emerging generation of public leaders elsewhere, but primarily here at the Kennedy School. And we are very blessed to have an incredible generation of public leaders that are coming up through the Kennedy School right now. He served as a White House advisor to 4 presidents of both parties, Nixon, Ford, Reagan, and Clinton. And he wrote about those experiences in his New York Times bestseller, Eyewitness to Power, The Essence of Leadership, Nixon to Clinton. He actually began his journalism career in the 80s, starting with McNeil Lehrer NewsHour, and he's been a regular commentator on public affairs for 30 years. He also serves on quite a few nonprofit boards, certainly has served both on Yale and Duke, the alma maters, to which he's very loyal, despite where he sits today. And he also serves on the board of City Year, Teach for America, among others. And I think it was just about 5 days ago he picked up his 26th honorary degree. So with that, David?
Thank you very, very much. And thank you for joining us. I think I'm the least experienced here about microphones. But but in any event, this has been a wonderful IDEASpHERE. It's a wonderful campaign kickoff, and you over the last few days, or a couple days, have had a chance to hear from many of our faculty. We thought it would be appropriate before this ends to hear from some of the people who are making so much of this possible, and that is the donors who have stepped up for this school on behalf of students, on behalf of leadership development, that has made an enormous difference in the life of our student body. Just a word about the Center for Public Leadership. You know, each center, there are 11 centers now, is having a luncheon today. We're very pleased you chose this one. Our center is devoted to the development, the advancement of a new generation of leaders, which we think is so critically important, not only in the governmental sector, but in the nonprofit sector, and indeed in the corporate sector, corporations that can have shared values, doing well and doing good at the same time. And part of our effort, a significant part of our effort, is in research. Max Bazerman, co-director, has done a fantastic job on behavior research. I wish we could spend a whole hour and a half on that, but you perhaps went to his session and you know what that is. We also do a great deal in terms of teaching co-curricular courses, skill building outside the curriculum, as well as many of the faculty members we have who teach inside the curriculum. Many of you have taken, for example, Ron Heifetz's course, when alumni come back here, Ron is the most popular thing they want to do. They want to hear more from him. Very, very importantly, and what we're extremely proud of, is that we have been working with the Dean and Mass Hall and others to try to increase the number of scholarships, fellowships here at the Kennedy School. And we at the Center for Public Leadership dedicated ourselves early on to the proposition, let's do this. We've been doing it for the last 10 years. This last year we had 50 students who call CPL their home through very generous fellowship programs. This next year we're going to have 74. We've had a significant increase coming in. We have 8 different scholarship programs. These fellows come together once a week for dinners. This is sort of modeled on the White House Fellowship Program. There's a lot of bonding to come and work together. This is not simply here's some money, see you later. This is come be part of a community, come be part of a family. We want to work with you in a very hands-on way to help you in your leadership development. And today we have 3 donors of fellowship programs to the Kennedy School. And we thought it'd be particularly important for you to hear from them about how they developed in life, how they became leaders in their own right, and have embraced, coming from the business community, have embraced philanthropic leadership and have embraced the whole notion of leadership for the common good. They are so important to this school. So here's the deal. We're going to have one student who has been a fellow or has helped bring a fellowship program to this school, introduce each one of these 3 donors, and then from there I'll have a conversation with them, and then we'll open this up. But first we're going to hear from Sarah. Where is Sarah? There she is. This is Sarah Menkara. Sarah is from Lebanon. She was diagnosed with blindness at the age of 7. She rapidly came to understand how differently people who are blind in the developing world are often treated from people who are diagnosed with blindness in the developed world. And she has dedicated much of her life to trying to help the community of blind people in the developing world. She started her own nonprofit, Empowerment. It's called Empowerment Through Integration. She's very dedicated to the idea of people with handicaps deserve a right to be integrated into the rest of the society. And there is no better example at the Kennedy School than Sarah. She is everywhere. Students have been working with her. I saw her go out in on a boat out in Cape Cod here at the beginning of the year, and she was just loving it out there in a kayak. I've seen Sarah with people working with her, trying to get her, help her drive a car. It's been a wonderful experience. She has been so inspiring to the students here. Sarah.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David, for this introduction. Okay, so I have the great honor of actually introducing one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. And when CPI asked me to introduce Glenn Dubin, I was thrilled beyond words. And this is because I know Glenn has many beautiful characteristics that are just beyond amazing. He's kind-hearted, he's generous, he is a very successful. He is just committed to his community. I'm going to start off first by giving you guys a short bio on who Glenn Dubin is. He's born and raised in New York. Went to Stony Brook University, got an econ degree, and from nothing he founded multiple companies. And one of them is the Highbridge Capital Management Fund, which is a multi-billion alternative asset management company. He's a CEO of and the co-founder of. But beyond that, he's also committed to philanthropy. He's the co-founder of Robin Hood Foundation, which is one of the most amazing foundations in New York City that focuses on alleviation of poverty. This foundation is actually, the operations of this foundation is fully funded through the board members, he's part of. He's also a board member of Mount Sinai Hospital. He's a board member of the Modern Art Museum. He's founded a center with his wife, a breast cancer center with his wife. But okay, so there's so many things that Glenn has done, which is amazing. But I want to talk about his who he is as an individual. He's so committed to his family. He has a beautiful wife, Ava, and 3 kids. And whenever you talk to him or meet with him, you know how much he loves and cares for his family. He's always there for them, for every step of their way. And it's amazing because he's, as a very busy man, with so many commitments, he's always there for his family. He actually went on a trip recently with his daughter to India. His daughter's actually a rising second year at Harvard College. I'm just completely astounded by his commitment to his family. And beyond that, he's also committed to his community, including the Dubin alums. Whenever anyone reaches out to him for advice or even emails him, he responds within seconds. I'm astounded. I don't know how he does that. I think it takes amazing character to do that. We have so much to learn from. Harvard is so lucky to have him part of the community, and we're so lucky as Dubin Fellows to even be part of this fellowship and to have met him. I've known him for the past 2 years. I remember meeting him the first day at a dinner. And at that dinner, I remember just feeling the kind-heartedness, the generosity, the warmth, and most importantly, the humbleness and down-to-earth that he embodies. He's the most down-to-earth, amazing guy that I've ever met in this world. And I think I've been lucky, and the Dubin Fellows have been lucky to have known him, and help me welcome him to this panel. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for being such an inspiration here and for the work we know you're going to be doing in the Middle East and well beyond. So we could spend a whole day talking about Glenn and about Sarah, but we have other treats in store. Let me ask Marissa Davis to come forward. Where is Marissa? There you are. Marissa is a second-year student in the MPP program at the Kennedy School now. She served as a co-chair for the 10th anniversary celebration of the Kennedy School's Black Policy Conference earlier this year. She worked for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation earlier. She has also worked in South Africa for empowerment of women. And very importantly, for the purpose of this conversation, Sarah's got so many strong strengths, but she was a real magnet for bringing Sheila Johnson to us. And we'll tell you more about Sheila as we go, but no one can introduce her more fully. Marissa, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is indeed my distinct privilege and pleasure to introduce Sheila Johnson this afternoon. I must share something with you, though. This is my third time introducing Sheila. So in addition to this master's public policy degree that I'll be getting in a couple weeks, I can add to the list professional Sheila Johnson introducer. So here we go. Sheila C. Johnson is the CEO of Salamander Hotels and Resorts, a hospitality company she founded in 2005. She's president and managing partner of the WNBA Washington Mystics and the first African American woman to be an owner or partner in 3 professional sports teams: the Mystics, the Washington Wizards, and the Washington Capitals. She has long been a powerful influence in the entertainment industry, starting with her work as founding partner of Black Entertainment Television, and has also been executive producer of 4 documentary films, not the least of which is her latest one, Lee Daniels' The Butler, which opened last fall, 2013. Her contributions to society are numerous, but there are a couple that I would like to share with you all this afternoon. Since 2011, she has been a member of the Accordia Global Health Foundation's International Council. But beyond that, I must share with you all her particular support and contributions to the Kennedy School community. I had the pleasure of meeting her last year when I was co-chair of the Black Policy Conference, so it's two years in a row. But the first time she served as our keynote speaker, and this past year she decided to, indulge us once more by joining us and celebrating the inaugural Sheila C. Johnson Fellowship Program. Beyond that, she is an active member of CPL's Leadership Advisory Council, and it is truly an honor to have gotten to know you, Sheila, and I must tell you all that I can say with confidence that you are certainly in for a treat this afternoon. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Marissa. Again, a whole afternoon there, because Sheila is a fascinating person, and we're going to be talking here in just a moment. We have one more introduction. I hope by now that you have had a chance while here over the last day or a half or 2 days to hear David Rubenstein. He's sort of a highlight. We do all these things at the Kennedy School, and David walks in and boom, he's like, everybody, where's David Rubenstein? I want to go hear him talk. He is an extraordinarily generous individual. He is the chairman of the capital campaign for the Kennedy School, which is off to a roaring start. And he has been very, very helpful to our students and to our center. So to introduce him is Eleanor Joseph, who has been a Rubenstein Fellow. We've heard from a Dubin Fellow, we heard from Marissa, who helped to bring the Johnson Fellowships, and now we have a Rubenstein Fellow. And Eleanor, I should say a bit more about you. She is a joint degree student, but you understand what the Rubenstein Fellowship is for students who are pursuing a joint degree at the Harvard Business School and the Harvard Kennedy School. And David Rubenstein personally, his generosity provides funds for anywhere 15 to 20 students who go through this program every year, thanks to David. Eleanor has worked for the Clinton Health Access Initiative in Kampala. She was there for 2 years as coordinating and supervising construction of a central processing lab for early infant diagnosis of HIV. She had received here at the Kennedy School the Award for Excellence in Persuasion and Negotiation. Very importantly, when she graduates, she's going to work in the mayor's office here in Boston. Another young man, Howard Coe, is chief of staff there, who's been through these halls, as some of you may know. And cities have become such an important laboratory for social change now. And Boston is right at the forefront of that. So Eleanor, we wish you well in that. It's a very important job.
Thank you very much, David. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce David Rubenstein. David Rubenstein is currently the co-founder and CEO of the Carlyle Group, which is one of the largest private equity firms in the world with over $185 billion under management. But I'm going to take you back a little bit because he's had a very interesting career across numerous different sectors. So after graduating from Duke, magna cum laude, and Phi Beta Kappa, Mr. Rubenstein went on to the University of Chicago Law School, where he was the editor of the Law Review. After graduating from law school, he practiced law in New York with Paul, Weiss, Rifkind, Wharton, and Garrison for a number of years, but he was quickly poached to the public sector, where he served from 75 to 76 as the chief counsel to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee's Subcommittee on Constitutional Amendments. He continued to serve under Carter as the Deputy Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy. In 1981, he returned to the legal field for a number of years before transitioning into the business community and co-founding the Carlyle Group, again, one of the world's largest PE firms. Beyond his interactions with the business community and the government, however, Mr. Rubenstein has done an incredible amount of philanthropic and charitable work. He is the chairman of the board of the JFK Center for Performing Arts and Duke University, the co-chair of the Brookings Institute, the vice chairman of the Council of Foreign Relations. He's a board member or a trustee at Johns Hopkins University, the University of Chicago, the Lincoln Center for Performing Arts, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, Johns Hopkins Medicine, the Natural Museum of American History, and Natural History. And he's a member and advisor for more organizations than I can list, but just a few of them are the American Academy for Arts and Sciences, Harvard Business School's Board of Dean's Advisors, the Woodrow Wilson School's Advisory Council, and the International Business Council at the World Economic Forum. So it is a great privilege and honor to introduce Mr. David Rubenstein.
Good. David, how do you know where you are every day?
I have a BlackBerry that tells me, but is there any time after these introductions? Is there any time left? Or
We will go immediately. Now, let's cut to
we
the
can never
tape.
live up to these introductions. Everybody, please lower your expectations
Yeah,
of what you're
yeah.
going to hear. We're not as good as you just heard.
Glenn, what I'd like to do is have a sort of brief conversation with each of you about what it is in your life that made you a leader and become a leader in philanthropy for the common good, each of you coming out of the private sector, and each of you having a remarkable childhood and pulling yourself. I mean, what characterizes all three of these people is how they pull themselves up in life. They're just really inspiring stories. Glenn, you grew up in modest, very modest circumstances. Tell us more about that and how you became Glenn Dubin.
Sure, David. I grew up in an area of northern Manhattan called Washington Heights. I was the oldest of two children, and my father drove a taxi cab for a living, and my mother immigrated to the United States when she was 10 years old from Austria, and I was the first one in my family to graduate from college. So just a little background. Probably, the most seminal event in my life that taught me about leadership, although back then I didn't think of it as leadership, happened when my father went through a midlife crisis and decided that he was going to get up and leave my family. And I was probably 17 years old, my brother was 15 years old, and my mother was emotionally very vulnerable and financially very vulnerable. And so what happened is I stepped into the void, and I became the surrogate head of the family. I offered emotional support to my mother, I offered emotional support to my brother, and I offered financial support to the family. And again, when you're 17 years old and you're going through this emotion, I should mention that my father and I were extremely close growing up. But after that event, we went through 7 years of separation. So when you're going through an event like that, you don't think of it as leadership. But as I look back now, I think that that event galvanized me, and I stepped up, and I became a leader in my family. And I think it's had a lot of influence on my career, my decision to go into finance and try and make money so that my family would be secure. I think it's had a lot of influence on fellowships programs that I've started here at the Kennedy School to try and give people the opportunity to be leaders themselves, particularly those people that have had obstacles in their lives. So again, I look back on that event as really being a seminal event in my life that started my career in leadership, if you will.
And coming out of your family circumstances, making a success for yourself financially, we've seen that happen in America. But I think what's very rare is the way you, pretty early on, came together with some friends to start Robin Hood. It's now the biggest anti-poverty organization in New York, an absolutely remarkable organization. Tell us about Robin Hood, what it was that got you to take that kind of leadership role in co-founding Robin Hood, and tell us more about Robin Hood itself.
Well, to be clear, all the credit in the world goes to my dear friend Paul Jones, who is in fact the founder of Robin Hood. But I was the first call that Paul made right after the stock market crash, or days after the stock market crash. And I like to say that the Robin Hood Foundation was born out of the events following the stock market crash of October 1987. And he called me, he said, look, we've just made a lot of money by being short stocks because we saw this parallel in the stock market between what happened in 1929 and what I thought was going to happen in 1986 and 1987. There's no question in my mind that this parallel will continue, the analog will continue, and that we're going to go into the next Great Depression. And I want to give back, and I want you to be my partner in the Robin Hood Foundation. So that was the genesis, the start of the Robin Hood Foundation. I think I can tell you that we looked at each other back then in 1987. I think we were both in our late 20s. Again, from my modest background, philanthropy wasn't something that was practiced at my house. We were most likely on the receiving end as opposed to the giving end of philanthropy. But my father was a very generous man. So I certainly, to the extent that generosity is a gene that you inherit, I think that I perhaps inherited the generosity gene from my father. But we knew nothing about the practice of philanthropy. But what we did know a little bit about was business and investing. And so I think what Robin Hood was successful at doing was applying investment principles, business principles to charitable giving 26, 27 years ago. And that really has been an important driver of success for the Robin Hood philanthropic model over the last 27 years.
This is an organization, as you heard in the introduction from Sarah, that the board pays for all the expenses of the organization. So every gift to Robin Hood goes directly into nonprofit organizations across New York, and they have a very strong measurement for They have metrics to judge the success or lack of success of the organizations, and if they're not producing results, they don't get funding. It's very tough-minded, but it works. And you have 240 grantees. This last week they had a dinner, their annual dinner, and in one night in New York, dinner that Glenn Dubin is very much responsible for, they raised $60 million. $60 million in one night for anti-poverty groups in New York. And what was so sweet about that dinner was Glenn's mother was there, and the two of them were featured on a film talking to each other. It was just a lovely, lovely moment for a lot of people. One last question. It was through Robin Hood that we actually found each other. Somebody called me the next day after you chaired one of those dinners, said, you got to talk to Glenn Dubin. And we invited him up, he met the students, and he agreed to start a fellowship program called the Dubin Fellows. But what's been striking, Glenn, is how close you become to the fellows, how much time. He's leaving today to go back to New York. He's got a home up on the river, Hudson, and he's having all the Dubin Fellows and their alumni to his home for the weekend. And it's characteristic of his relationship. Tell us a little bit about what moves you on that.
Well, I should say that I was asked to come up to the Kennedy School, meet with David and with Kathy, and speak about my background, speak about my business career, and talk about the founding of Robin Hood, which I did in front of a co-curricular event, and I met these phenomenal, fascinating, brilliant students. And then David and Kathy started talking to me about getting involved in establishing a fellowship program. And I remember being in David's office, and Seth Moulton, who was a Zuckerman Fellow, walked by David's office. David waved him in and introduced me to, again, this incredible, charismatic gentleman who had just come back from Haiti. And he told me the story where he rounded up a group of Zuckerman Fellows, went to Haiti, established this rapid response effort on the border of the Dominican Republic, and got in medical supplies to the people that were affected by the Haiti earthquake, and probably saved, certainly scores, if not hundreds of lives. And it was probably a month or 2 months after I had written a check to 1-800-HELP-HAITI. You may recall that the two former presidents were kind of talking on the air about you have to help Haiti, look this horrible natural disaster that has affected the Haitian people. And I, like many of us, wrote a check anonymously to 1-800-HELP-HAITI. And what resonated with me after meeting Seth Moulton was, my goodness, I would feel so much better had I had a fellowship program and had somebody like Seth in that program that took some of what he learned from the Kennedy School, crisis management courses, took what he learned as being a 3-time serving officer in the military, both in Afghanistan and Iraq, go to Haiti and save lives. So being an active philanthropist. So that was, kind of my catalyst to get involved with the Kennedy School and start these fellowship programs. And Sarah is one of the fellows, and to give you a sense of you got a sense of how meaningful a relationship with somebody like Sarah is. But this offsite that we're about to have with about 30 fellows this weekend, I got the agenda yesterday, and on the agenda it says ice-breaking event. We're going to blindfold all of the fellows, conceived by Sarah. And it just the joy and the satisfaction of seeing these fellows first matriculate through here and then go into the real world and make a difference in society has been very, very meaningful part of my philanthropic efforts.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you. Well, Sheila, you came from, your dad was a neurosurgeon, was he not?
Yes.
But he worked for the VA, and you moved countless times as a child, like 17 or 18 times? How many?
13.
13 times. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But it was striking when did you start playing the violin?
I think it was in the 13th move. And I think what people have to understand, my father was one of 11 African-American neurosurgeons in the country at the time, and they would not let us practice in white hospitals. And over the years, I saw the pain and the struggle in his eyes of not being accepted. Just an absolutely brilliant man who was not only a great neurosurgeon, but he also had another major with psychology, and he was also a great pianist. So that's how the music came into being. And most doctors would come in from surgery and they would sit down and they would start drinking. My father would sit down at the piano and just perform for hours, and that was his way of de-stressing. But I think more than anything, through those 13 moves, was to see the pain and the agony of him not being able to settle his own family down with all of the education that he had and the barriers that he had broken, but to not be accepted to be able to practice in any hospital. So that's how we ended up in the VA. And the VA moved us every 10 months wherever there was brain surgeries needed. So I look back on it. Yes, it was tough at the time, but I look at it as a positive because I've been able to assimilate through all races and cultures, and I feel comfortable with everyone because of all the different moves that we had to make. But we finally settled outside of Chicago, and he became chief of staff at Hines VA Hospital, and that's when I took up the violin, which was my first act in life. So I studied violin, got a music scholarship at the University of Illinois, and studied with Paul Rowland. And then 1 year with Roman Totenberg, Nina Totenberg's father.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
Totenberg, NPR, big,
yeah.
big major figure in NPR.
And then was part of the Illinois String Research Project with Paul Rowland, who was instrumental in bringing Suzuki into the country. So I was very involved in that whole music era of the Suzuki Project and all of that. From there, graduating from the University of Illinois, I was then asked, I started teaching, and that's where I ran into my buddy over here, Mr. Rubenstein. We had kids that went to school together, and I taught at Sidwell Friends, but this was before our kids were born. And actually started a string orchestra back then, and Sidwell Friends wasn't really that much into music, but I decided if they were going to hire me, I wasn't just going to sit around and play the guitar. So I did start a really magnificent string orchestra called Young Strings in Action. And to make a long story short, Queen Nora of Jordan came in with her delegation down at the old post office pavilion, heard the orchestra, invited us to play at the oldest cultural festival in the Middle East, which is the Jerash Festival. So we went there, we were a big hit. They then, King Hussein gave me the highest honor called Al Nada, decorated me. And I built a music conservatory over there. So that was Act 1 of my life. Act 2 of my life, when all of this was happening, because I was bringing in the paycheck at the time, we're starting a company, a cable network called Black Entertainment Television. So you have to understand that's when cable was cool, and that's when the birth of all the cable networks came together. And there was a guardian angel by the man named John Malone who really financed BET all the way to the sale of Viacom. So the second act of my life is I stopped teaching in 1989, fully immersed into the company to start building programming there, and I did a show called Teen Summit, which was on the air for 11 years. We got grants from the Kaiser Foundation. Sold BET to Viacom for a $3 billion price tag. And then got divorced, and I then blossomed into a new life. And I started a new company, a hotel company called Salamander Hotels and Resorts, which I have 3 big grand resorts in Florida, Innisbrook, Reunion, and Hammock Beach. And I've just finished building a Salamander Resort and Spa in Middleburg, Virginia, which is doing very well. So in between all of that, and the reason why I'm giving you this very brief resume here, there were doors that opened up to me that I don't think any woman would have ever experienced. It was during that time, and this was a case where I really look back on it, and it's like never burn your bridges. And a man by the name of Abe Poland came to me, and myself and Abe and Irene, we'd always been pretty close friends. And Abe called me to his office one day, and he says, Sheila, I'm going to give you an opportunity of a lifetime. He says, I'd like you to buy the Washington Mystics. And I said, you want me to get into team ownership? And he says, yes. And I said, I don't know whether you're giving me the opportunity of a lifetime. I want to know how much is this going to cost me. And, he gave me the price tag. I said, I don't think the team's worth that, but I think that you should let me see the financials. And I knew in my heart that he was giving me, this was an icebreaker. No woman ever got the opportunity to own a sports team. So I called my lawyer, and I told him what was happening, and he said, Sheila, you are not buying a team. And I said, Sandy, if you were given that opportunity, would you do it? And he sort of got silent. I said, see, I said, don't even answer, because you would. I said, I'm on my way over, and I said, you're my lawyer. I pay you to make things work. So I went in there, I told him, and I'd been thinking all the way over, not only am I going to buy the Washington Mystics, but I'm going to come in and buy the basketball team and the hockey team. I'm going to come in as an equal partner, not a penny less, not a dollar more. So I was able to go to Ted Leonsis, and I said, look, you can get a twofer here. You can get a woman and an African American. And I said, there's no other team ownership that'll have that. So he said, you know, that's a great idea. He says, let me take it to the other partners. And sure enough, they did let me in. So to make a long story short, I was named vice chairman of Monumental Sports. So Ted and I do work very closely together with teen ownership. But I have to say it's my music that gave me the foundation that has helped me build my career. It's through the arts.
Because of how it inspired your imagination, because of the discipline and learning to play
It's
the violin.
all of that.
Oh.
It was the discipline, it was the focus, it was to help me think out of the box creatively.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
problem solving. When you're sitting in an orchestra and you have to listen to other instruments and you have to
Yeah.
watch a conductor,
Yeah.
it sharpens your focus of really getting to know a person and getting to understand management skills. It is amazing what the arts
Yeah.
can do.
Well, David Rubenstein and I had a friend, Sid Harmon, who used to argue that if you want to run a successful corporation, hire poets because they think outside the box.
It's true.
That was very important for him. So
Yeah.
one should not assume. Sheila became the first African-American woman to become a billionaire in this country. But one should not assume that this has been an easy path. She's faced a lot of obstacles. Kathy Coyle and I, when we began talking to Sheila a couple of years ago, got involved with the Salamander Hotel that she's opened, this spa that she's opened in Middleburg, Virginia. This is a spa, it's like a wonderful story. A spa built by an African-American woman, and you go up onto the second floor and you look out on the Bull Run battlefield. It's the heart of the old Confederacy. And you realize this is an African-American woman who has built something right here. And it's like wonderful. It really says a lot about what's possibilities of change through leadership.
But
Tell us, Salamander. Why you call it the Salamander? It's really interesting.
yeah, this is really interesting because this will lead, it kind of segues in what he just said. I bought a horse farm because my daughter is a professional equestrian, show jumper, and after the divorce, I wanted to move to a place where she could really fully train. So we moved to Virginia, and I found this farm called Salamander, and this belonged to a guy by the name of Bruce Sunland. And those of the older generation remember the show of Hogan's Heroes. Well, he was really the Hogan way back when he was a fighter pilot, shot down, his unit was captured. The U.S. said, you've got to go back in, let's pull him out, let's get him freed, and we're going to give you the code name Salamander. So that whole show of Hogan's Heroes was built around Bruce Sunland's life, which there's a documentary that's being done, and it should come out next year. So anyway, when I went to buy the farm, and I asked Bruce, I said, why Salamander? He told me the story. He says, but most importantly, he said, it's the only animal that can walk through fire and still come out alive. Well, I had just been through hell, so I just said, you know, can I use this? Because I knew that I was going to build this hotel company. Now, just to segue after what he just was talking about, this hotel, it has taken me 11 years to build this project because little did I know, and I went into this very naively, once you cross the Mason-Dixon line, it's a whole nother world. And I went down there and I bought all of Pamela Harriman's property. It was brought to me, and I walked up there and I said, you know what, this is the perfect place to put a resort. And once I announced that, and you know, we had a little media up there, and Willard Scott came and the County Board of Supervisors, the next day I woke up going to Dulles Airport and I saw signs on both sides of the road that said, don't BET Middleburg. And I knew right then we had a problem. And from that point on, you've seen the nastiest fight in the world, and there are still people within that community that will not set foot in that resort, and I know it's racism. They did not want me to build me. It could have been anybody else. And I had some drunk guy just a few weeks ago who was leaving, and he says, real loud, he says, I'm going to call Donald Trump and I'm going to get you out of here. I want him to buy this place. And I'm like, we're still struggling with all of this. But racism is still alive and well. But the good thing that has happened out of all this, some of those people that have opposed me, they're at that bar every night and they're spending their money. And it's terrific, but it's been a lesson learned on both sides. One thing I learned was humility is everything. I never stooped to their level in this fight. And to this day, I deliver a check to that town that was just about bankrupt for $80,000 to $100,000 a month. And all of their worries are gone because of that resort that's built up there. And I think slowly I may be changing some minds out there who only saw African Americans in a servant's role. And now I'm a business owner out there that's making monumental changes. And I'm changing people. I'm changing attitudes. And I think this has been the greatest time in my life where I'm really not afraid to be afraid of criticism. I don't live in fear, that I can eyeball anybody with love and with courtesy and with humility, because this is how we're going to change this world. Someone has got to step forward to be able to just look, this is the way it is, this is the way the world is going. And you have to deal with your own issues. So I've taken it on as my responsibility to be the best business owner in that area and in the state of Virginia. I see the joy when they come in those front doors. I mean, their faces light up. They say, we had no idea. You've changed us.
You're also changing into Kennedy School, and let's make one last comment, and I want to. We were just thrilled when you agreed to start a Sheila Johnson Fellowship program here at the school. It's for predominantly it's for students who have a deep passion and commitment to the African American community. And I'll just tell you the results. And we had a very short time. We had a terrific team to get the word out to the African American community. We have these fellowships. We'd love you to apply. We'd love you to come to the Kennedy School. We would be honored if you would come. And Barbara Best and Sharon Fluker, who were here, just did a magnificent job with Patty getting the word out to everybody. And we've had, for the last 5 or 6 years, the number of African Americans at this school has been very low. It's been around 2 dozen. And it's been flatlined. It's been way too low, as is the Latino community, by the way. And with Sheila Johnson's fellowship, the applications from the African American community this year to this incoming class, they're up 72%. 72%. We don't have the final numbers on how many will actually be coming, but I can tell you the numbers already show there's going to be a dramatic increase in the number of African Americans coming here to the school. It's really helpful to the culture of the school. She's doing that. So I'm just curious, just in a few words, what are you trying to accomplish with the Sheila Johnson Fellowship?
I'm trying to give opportunities to those who are underserved but have the brilliance to be able to make change. And through my leadership, I'm going to introduce them to my world. They're going to learn to play in my sandbox. They're going to learn to cast their net wider. I'm going to teach them how to network. I'm going to give them access. And that has been the problem within the African American community. We have not been able to have the access to reach out to others, to help us really rise in this society. We have so many brilliant, underserved students out there that can really make a difference. I'm trying to produce leaders in underserved communities that are going to really help everyone.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. David Rubenstein. David, his group Carlisle was one of the first to sign up and to have a retreat at the Salamander in Middleburg. He's a man of many, many parts. And it's extraordinary how far he is, not only how generous he is, but how far he's come in life. David, tell us a little bit about your background growing up in Baltimore. You were essentially in a ghetto.
Yes, my parents were not college graduates. They weren't high school graduates either. My father dropped out of high school to go into World War II. He came back, he met my mother. My mother was 17 when they got married. My father was 20. I was born more than 9 months later. I'm the only child. If your father's last name is Rubenstein, sometimes you might think he's a lawyer, doctor, businessman, but my father didn't have an education, so he worked in the post office his entire life, made no more than $7,000 a year. And the ghetto that David refers to is that Baltimore didn't quite recognize the Supreme Court decisions that said you can't discriminate against people who are black or Jewish. So the mortgages basically had provisions that said you cannot sell your home to somebody who's black or Jewish, and while it was against the law, they more or less were enforced. So people who were Jewish had to live in a very narrow ghetto area of Baltimore, and I was more or less 13 before I realized everybody in the world isn't Jewish. I didn't know anybody wasn't Jewish. I went to a public high school and got a scholarship to go to Duke, and then a scholarship to go to University of Chicago Law School. And my goal in life was to commit to public service. I had been inspired by President Kennedy's inaugural address to commit to help the country. Making money was not something I ever thought of. My parents never had any, and it just wasn't on my horizon. And unfortunately, I wasn't that good at my public service. I went to work for Senator Birch Bayh on the Senate committee. He was running for president at the time. 30 days after I joined his Senate staff, he dropped out of running for the presidency, so my political acumen probably wasn't very good in selecting him. I did then go work for Jimmy Carter, who was running for president. He was 33 points ahead when I joined his campaign. He won by 1 point. So often wonders what my acumen was there. I got a job in the White House because they hand them out to people working in campaigns. I was 27 when I was the Deputy Domestic Policy Advisor to the President of the United States, a job I wasn't qualified for, but President Carter wasn't qualified either. I thought nobody was qualified. I fit in. I managed to get inflation to 19%, a record that hasn't been topped since. And there was a rumor going around that if Carter was reelected, I would have been appointed to be the senior domestic advisor on the second term. And on the strength of that rumor, President Carter thinks he lost the election. So I had to go out and find a job again, and I went back and practiced law. And like my first foray practicing law, my clients suggested maybe I do something else. I wasn't that good at it. I wasn't that good in politics. I wasn't that good in government. I wasn't that good a lawyer. And so I started a company in 1987 and got very, very lucky. And so what I've tried to do now is recognize that because of this enormous luck I've had, I probably couldn't have done this in some other country. If your last name is Rubenstein, you come from very modest circumstances. Maybe in other countries you might be able to rise up, but not always the case. And so what I've tried to do now, my philanthropy, is essentially give away all my money. I was one of the first 40 people to sign the Giving Pledge that Bill Gates and Warren Buffett put together. And the only person in private equity, though, there are other generous people in the private equity world for sure. And now what I'm trying to do is go an array of different things. I am involved in a lot of educational things, so I am very committed to education because I think our higher education system is the best in the world and we are the envy of the world, and I want to make sure it's better than it even is today, and therefore we'll pull up the other higher education schools in the United States by following the best schools like Harvard or Duke or University of Chicago, but also help other people around the world increase their standards. But one of the things I've tried to do is to do something that I call patriotic philanthropy, which is to give back to your country. My theory is that many people don't really recognize how fortunate we are to be in our country with all of its flaws. We're still the best country in the world. And so I want to encourage people to make up the deficit that the federal government has or other governments in not being able to afford all the things they used to be able to do. So in those categories, I would say I'd like to buy historic documents and give them to the U.S. government to put on display so people can learn more about American history and learn more about the freedoms we have. So I did buy the only copy in private hands of the Magna Carta and gave it to the National Archives, and a copy of the Emancipation Proclamation, gave it to President Obama. It's now in the Oval Office, and rare copies of the Declaration of Independence, and have them displayed in Washington and other appropriate places so people can learn more about history and be inspired when they see them. I also try to repair certain things or restore things that remind people of our great traditions. So putting up the money to repair Monticello, put up money to help fix Mount Vernon, and most recently put up money to help fix the Washington Monument, and then do other things in Washington like support the efforts in the National Gallery of Art or National Archives or the Smithsonian or the Kennedy Center. And I hope by doing that I can encourage other people to try to give back to our country, because while there are many great things we can do in our country with our money, doesn't get enough attention right now that our country doesn't really have the ability to afford the many things it used to be able to afford. So if some people in their philanthropy can do more than just do some of the traditional things they do, give back to the country, that's one of the things I want to do. And I try to encourage people by saying, look, if you give away your money or your time, your energy, ideas, I try to make it a point that philanthropy is an ancient Greek word that means giving, loving humanity, not just giving away money. You can do many things even if you don't have money to give back. But do what you can, and you'll probably feel better about yourself. And my theory is that it's selfish. If you feel better about yourself, you'll live longer. And if you live longer, you know, that's a good thing. Rarely are grumpy people living long. Happy people live long. And so you'll be happy if you give away your money. And so it's selfish. I'm giving away my money because it makes me happy to do so. And I think maybe I'll live longer because of it. The Kennedy School is a unique kind of institution. I was saying last night to some of the people who were at the dinner and may have heard me, but I'll repeat it. The Kennedy School is unique in that it gets most of its money from people who never went to the Kennedy School. In fact, it gets most of its money from people who never went to Harvard.
Yes, all three.
Right.
All three.
None of us went to Harvard, and none of us went to the Kennedy School. 90% of the money that comes to the Kennedy School comes from people who never went to the Kennedy School, and 75% of the money comes from people who never went to Harvard in any form or any part of Harvard. And that's because, in my view, I think people have the same view that I do, Kennedy School is unique. It convenes people, it trains people, it educates people in ways that no other institution in the United States really does or in the world, and also inspires other organizations to try to get their game up to what the Kennedy School has become. So while I think there are many ways to help one's country, and giving to federal government and other kinds of things can help, I think giving to great academic institutions does help our country. And to the extent that it helps our country, that's a very patriotic act. And so I think by giving to Harvard, even though I didn't go to Harvard, I think I'm helping to create an even better university here that will inspire other universities to elevate their game, and also will help, I think, train people who are going to be future leaders in the world. And hopefully if they have a good training here, they'll do a better job in running their governments or their organizations. And so that's why I've been involved, and that's why I think giving to the Kennedy School is an important thing.
And David, in this capital campaign, what do you think it will do for the school?
Well, the capital campaigns are an American invention. You know, they didn't exist hundreds of years ago. They didn't exist hundreds of years ago because endowments weren't really such an important thing of academic institutions. The capital campaign for any institution, but certainly a university, does several things. What it does is it enables all the parts of the university to force themselves to come together and say, what are we really about and what is our mission? And once they get that work done, they can figure out what they're trying to become and be, and they can come forward and say, here's what we need the money to do. And so it's not just a factor of saying, let's go out and raise X dollars because we want X dollars. You have to actually explain what you want with the money and what you're going to do with it. And so all of Harvard and the Kennedy School have come together and said, this is what we need to do with the money, and this is how we're going to make the Kennedy School better. It also tends to give you more endowment money. Endowment money enables you to have ongoing operations that don't have to be funded every year because you have an endowment from which you can take a certain amount of income. And most importantly, what a capital campaign honestly does is it gets more people excited about the institution and involved. And that means that the annual giving will actually increase, because from the beginning of a capital campaign to the end, the amount of annual giving tends to go up. And so when the capital campaign is over, you have more donors who feel that they want to give money regularly, not just part of the capital campaign. So you get a university or organization like the Harvard Kennedy School to feel what it's about. It understands better what it's about. It can tell people what it's about. It can bring its people together. Ultimately, it'll get more endowment money and ultimately get more annual giving, and also make the school a better place in terms of teaching and in terms of educating, in terms of research. So that's what I think the capital campaign here is about. We today have a goal of $500 million. We've raised $336 million of that already. That money has come from 4,000 donors. Those donors are giving from modest sums to larger sums. 44 donors have given $1 million or more. 17 have given more than $1 million. And some have given staggeringly larger sums, and two of them are sitting right here. They've given gigantic amounts of money to the capital campaign and to Harvard and the Kennedy School, in effect. And so we're very, very grateful for what they've done, and we're very grateful for what all of you have done, because by your presence here, you are in effect saying, I'm interested in the capital campaign, I'm interested in the Kennedy School, and some of you may have money, some of you may have time, some of you may have energy, some of you may have ideas, and also you have a network. And you might be able to bring people in who might be able to learn more about this. So obviously one of the people here learned about Sheila Johnson and helped persuade her to maybe get involved, learn more about the Kennedy School, and that was very helpful to the Kennedy School, and I hope Sheila will feel it was very helpful to what she's interested in doing. So all of you are major parts of the capital campaign. All of you can do something that I think is significant. And I like to say, in conclusion, that none of us really know what our purpose is on the face of the earth. We don't really know why we're here. We all have different views of it. As a general rule, I think people feel at a certain point in life that they want to do something that makes the world a slightly better place, or their part of the world. And I try to tell students, and I'm going to make 2 commencement speeches this weekend and try to give this message, that don't wait to the last third of your life. I unfortunately waited to the last third of my life to give away my money. I wish I had had more time to do it earlier or spend more time involved in philanthropy. So I try to encourage students and everybody, try to figure out what it is that you want to do to make the world a slightly better place. Now, whether or not there's a heaven, I don't know. But if you do make the world a better place, you'll certainly enjoy it more from heaven when you look down. If there isn't, you'll feel better about yourself while you're on the face of the earth. So try to figure out what it is that you want to do that justifies your existence on the face of the earth, and try to do something in a small way, a medium way, a large way, to do something to make the world a better place, because that's really what human beings are all about, trying to make civilization better than it was when we were born.
Wow. We have about 10 more minutes. I've just been told 8. So we're going to allow a couple of questions and bring students back up here. We do need to cut off in order to go over to those who wants to go over. There's a champagne toast at the forum at 3 o'clock. Is that correct?
Well, it's 2:30 is when it actually starts. 2:45, David Elwood is going to make some remarks, so
Okay,
you wouldn't want to miss his speech.
Okay,
Right.
I think actually, given the elevator situation, it is not easy to get downstairs from here and get over there. You know, you can only, maybe we ought to go directly to the final comments. Is there anybody who has a comment, a quick comment or question? Yes, you have a mic, and so you get the question.
Yeah, so I'll make it quick. Thank you so much for your time. So I think one of the things that's really interesting, I come from the startup world, so we have a lot of very high-profile suicides and people who are kind of coming out and admitting that they've struggled with depression and anxiety. And so I'm just kind of wondering, and I'm just really interested in this from my perspective as well as, you know, in general, high achievers. I think we're getting now to the point where it's okay to be more vulnerable and share kind of our defeats and our failures, whereas culturally in the society we celebrate the successes. How is it that you personally sort of recharge when you are feeling kind of down or low energy or depressed?
Good question. Anybody want to respond to that?
I mean, I can start. I mean, I went through a life-changing event where, you know, as a woman that helped an ex-husband start a company, and I was constantly pushed out of the picture that I didn't have anything to do with it. And it was just a case where, and maybe it's the resilience in me, I just had to fight back and prove that I was just as capable, if not more capable. And that's probably why I'm building this third company, was to prove something. And I'm successful at it. I know what I can do. It's just something that I had to push through my mind. And we're all going to hit these roadblocks, and you can't let these roadblocks get to you. You really can't. Your turn.
I would just say that failure is a very important element
Yeah.
for future success. And you can be defeated by failure, or you can learn from failure. I failed a number of different times, but I've learned from those experiences, and it's helped future success.
Go to Starbucks and see to get something that stimulate me that would make me feel better. Usually, I don't know, some nice coffee or tea, and then I lose my depression. Actually, you know, if you have achieved anything in life worth achieving, you've had setbacks. If you haven't had setbacks, you haven't lived. And I've met everybody in the world now with great resumes, and they all have had setbacks. Anybody that's achieved anything has had setbacks and difficulties. And so you just learn that it's part of life, and you just kind of plow through it. Now, some of them can be so debilitating that you get clinical depression, and you just can't function. But short of that, I think you just have to recognize that you're going to be defeated at certain things in life, and you just have to keep pushing forward. And if you do, ultimately, and you keep persisting, you will ultimately, I think, be successful. If you stay focused, you know what you want to do, and you have certain characteristics. So, defeat is part of life, and it's one of the more enjoyable parts of life, because if you turn around a bit in time, you will overcome those roadblocks that you encountered.
Yeah, and I have to agree with both of them.
Very quick question about the campaign, actually.
Quick.
I ask her? Very quick. My name is Sarah Borsaleri. I graduated mid-career and studied philanthropy, which was very rewarding, and then had the great honor and privilege of working with the Dean's Councils here, and have found my great love in all the things you're talking about, the networking and all that. How can, and I so appreciate this event, how can we learn more about the Capital Campaign in terms of beyond just giving, in terms of
Okay.
like strategic plans?
I didn't ask her to ask that question.
No,
but,
I'm not. I am not a plant.
David.
No, I'm very curious actually, because you've been very subdued
okay.
this past 2 days about speaking about the campaign.
Well, I would say I haven't been subdued, but I would say David Elwood is, maybe more reticent in terms of being public about, the ask for the money or so forth, because he's more refined than maybe I am. And so I will do that in a few minutes. You'll hear me. But to be very serious, capital campaigns have this quiet phase, and that's where you raise a fair benefit from your best donors. But the success of a capital campaign depends on what happens in the public phase, or what I call the noisy phase. And that's the part where everybody knows what's going on. And there you have to really spread your wings, because you've really gone to your best donors already. And a capital campaign will succeed only if the people that weren't donors before are now joined. Now, the trick with a capital campaign launch is the follow-up. It's expensive to have this event cost. I know how much it costs. I won't tell everybody, but it costs a fair amount of money to put this event together for the last 2 days. It's an expenditure that we think is an investment, and we think we'll get our money back, because we think we'll have met new people, we've inspired more people, and get people to give. The trick in a capital campaign launch is one word: follow up. If we have inspired people here today and we don't contact them within the next 30 to 60 days, the goodwill from a capital campaign launch is largely lost. Just like the goodwill of a meeting or anything is lost in 30 or 60 days if you don't follow up. So what we have to do, and we have a process, is to contact everybody that's been here. But clearly, those people that are more inspired than others, if they contact us, we will be more inspired to contact them more quickly. So we will contact you within 30 seconds of the time that this thing is over.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask the three folks who introduced this are going to make very brief comments. Then we're going to end. I'd like you, if you wouldn't mind, for these folks to get a chance to go out the door quickly and get to an elevator, because they really have to be over there as part of the run. And we will try to get to as many of you downstairs as quickly as we can. There'll be, if you give a donation before you get on the elevator, you will get a faster ride and make it. But okay, let's begin. Sarah.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna end off by gonna be thanking Glenn. I think so. Anyone who comes and asks me right now, what was the most amazing part of your Kennedy School experience, and I would automatically say, without any second thought, the Dubin Fellowship. Besides the fact that I had the opportunity to get the fellowship and to be part of the CPL co-curricular activities and trips and etc., Glenn's generosity has provided me the right support system. He created for us a Dubin family. We really call it the Dubin family. We are connected with Dubin alums and current Dubin fellows, and we always are able to reach out to Glenn with any advice, with any support, with any help. I remember once I had a video created for my nonprofit, and I sent it to Glenn, and he had his whole family watch it. It's amazing. Like, he's so committed to us. He really provides the right support system for us. He has a retreat every year, which actually we're going to tonight, at his compound. It's just amazing, the family support he's created for us. He's got us ready for us to graduate and to really go out in the real world and, fight this world. And
let's go.
So thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah. We're looking forward to the compound here. Let's go.
So how?
Okay, Marissa.
I am here, of course, to thank Sheila personally, but I'd just like to share something with you all. I proudly stand before you all as, in many ways, the realized dreams of my mother and my grandmother. My grandmother was, she left formal education, I think, at about 4th grade, and then decided to clean people's homes so that my mother and my aunts and uncles could have the opportunity to be in school. And when my mother decided to move us from Jamaica to here, it was because my older sister had the ambitions to be a physician. My older sister is a physician now, and I'm here with you all at the Kennedy School. and my younger sister is a doctor-to-be. And that was because the door was opened in many ways for us. And I think the Sheila C. Johnson Fellowship, through the personal commitment of Sheila Johnson, I think helps to realize dreams that are similar to my own. I'm very well aware that my being here is still an exception. When you think about other persons who look like me, who have yet to kind of be in this space, and I think through this fellowship, it helps to realize that dream for many other people. So thank you.
Thank you. Hello there.
And I would just like to thank David Rubenstein. David Gergen mentioned this earlier, but all of the Rubenstein Fellows are joint degrees between the Kennedy School and the Business School. And all three of our panelists today have done substantial work and had substantial careers in the private sector. And so I think one thing that my fellowship and the Rubenstein Fellowship sort of recognizes specifically is the interconnectivity, the mandatory, the necessary interconnectivity of these sectors. And on a more personal note, I've worked in the private sector. It wasn't on the bio that David read, but worked in the private sector, worked in the nonprofit sector, and as David mentioned, I'm going to go work in the public sector after graduating with the mayor of Boston. And so seeing Mr. Rubenstein really gives me the sort of courage to form a little bit of an unconventional path and be comfortable traversing those sectors, because to me that's the direction our world is going. And it's scary because it's a less conventional path, it's less defined, and you don't know if you're going to necessarily be able to move as smoothly as you have done, even though you are self-deprecating in it. I'm sure that it was in some way, shape, or form part of your own doing. And so hopefully I'll be as lucky, but really sort of seeing you as an example gives me and the other Rubensteins the courage to form those sorts of innovative careers.
Thank you very, very much. A theme of this campaign is ask what you can do, imagine what we can do together. I can't imagine a better conversation to bring us all together and understand we're in this together. Thank you all.